between the Conservative Party and the Brexit Party.
John Curtis there. Well, tonight we have Douglas Murray, the Associate Editor of The Spectator, who has a new book out called The Madness of Crowds, Gender, Race and Identity. Also with us, the author and journalist Paul Mason. Welcome to you both. What do you make of the strategy that Boris Johnson seemed to be employing tonight? If we just look at the language and the way that the rhetoric is being used now, Barry Gardiner had a sort of a thought about it, and I'm wondering whether you think...
Well, I recognise that language, traitor, surrender, betrayal, because it's the language that a group of fascists and football hooligans shouted at me when I was on Whitehall at a peaceful Remain rally 2 weeks ago.
Do you mean real fascists? Do you know that they were fascists?
Members of the EDL, members of the Democratic Football Lads Alliance. And they all shouted to me, we've researched you. So what's happening is that... So Hannah Arendt, the German philosopher who studied fascism, called this the alliance of the elite and the mob. The language that we hear from Geoffrey Cox, from Johnson, of surrender, of betrayal, translates very differently into a kind of local pub or club or group of football hooligans. And those female MPs tonight, I think, were right to point out to Johnson that this language is the language of incitement. And it's all too familiar to those of us who have studied the rise of fascism. I'm sorry, he is not a fascist, but we do have the far right, the alt-right, and Trump is already way down that route. Johnson took the first step down it tonight.
Douglas.
Well, I disagree. I think that the similarity of the cases with Trump and with Brexit, one of the similarities is that both are votes which an elite, I don't say the elite, because no country has the elite, but an elite has not accepted still. And the same playbook has been used against both votes. We started in 2016 with the allegation that the voters were stupid, for instance. They didn't know what they'd voted for. Then we had the voters were racists. Then we had the voters were fascists. Then we had the voters had been misled by Russia. We had this in the UK and we had it in America. And we had in America then the attempt to impeach the president to go through the Mueller inquiry. The Mueller inquiry turned out there wasn't any evidence that the Russians had actually done the election. So we come back once again. I'm sorry, I haven't been on this programme since before the summer, but we come back to exactly the same problem we had then. This is going to keep happening until the thing the people asked for at least looks like it has happened. So, and there's no way around that. However much
Douglas,
the parliamentarians try.
That is the end goal of the Prime Minister. Is he right to talk about Jo Cox as being the best way to honour her memory is to deliver Brexit? Is he
Emily,
right
with all
to
due
say
respect,
humbug?
Even before that happened, it was clear what some people in the House were primed to do. Another Labour MP had already said that Geoffrey Cox using the term that a question was like a "when did you stop beating your wife" question was in fact very offensive to her, because she said this is basically making domestic violence right. You used earlier, if I can say so, in the discussion with Leila Moran, you used the phrase pulling the trigger against the Prime Minister. We can all do this about words, but we come back to the central thing. We had a vote 3 years ago, and it's still not been acted upon.
But I'm just asking whether
Emily.
whether the language offended you at all. Your leader, Jeremy Corbyn...
it's not my leader, he's the leader of the Labour Party.
Leader of the Labour Party, used this phrase, real people, yesterday in his conference speech. I'm curious to know what a real person is, whether you can still be a real person if you've gone to private school.
No, the real British people are divided, and the anger is palpable, for certain.
Wait, you've just done it again. The real British people are divided. Who are the non-real British people?
I mean, realism is an attitude in philosophy. It's what you can touch and feel. And what I mean by real is when I go to the doorstep, people open their doors who are angry with me because I'm a pro-Remain left-winger. And I think reality is I'm admitting and accepting that reality is fractured and angry. Now, I think if this was all happening by accident, we could say to everybody, calm down, which is what the politicians were saying tonight. There is a plan by a section of the super rich to destroy the democratic institutions, the multilateral global order, and with it, belief in democracy.
But they're both
this is
using
what
this
both
plan,
Trump,
aren't they?
I'm sorry, whatever you think about Corbyn, you cannot accuse him actually of populism. If he was doing populism, he'd be popular.
What about people before privilege? I mean,
No,
isn't that populism?
I don't think there's any evidence that some secret gang of super rich people.
It's not secret. It's absolutely,
or
public.
Open gang. Okay,
it's absolutely
no
public.
gang of super rich people is trying to destroy our democracy.
Mercer.
Oh, God, you're still trying to do the same playbook. It's failed already for 3 years. It's going to keep failing. But let's come back to the point of the Commons. The problem we have here is that the Labour Party, your party, the party of opposition, will not go for election. And so they are trying to do something which I would say is very, very dangerous, whatever side you're on, which is that we have a Prime Minister who wants to take us out of the EU on the 31st of October. This Parliament seems to be trying to keep him in order that he breaks his promise to the people. That is one more politician that will have visibly broken his trust with the people. We can't get to that place in this country. If we're going to get through this period, we have to get through it only in one way, which is to recognise that people voted to recognise that the people voted legitimately, wisely, as they saw it, and that we have to act on it. There's only one way through, which is to act on the Brexit vote.
I think today will have triggered a few responses, and one of them, I think, is to go earlier for a vote of no confidence, to create the interim government earlier, if necessary, without Corbyn as leader. Because I agree with you on one thing, we can't go on with this, because this has consequences on the streets.
Nor can we have a new leader forced upon the people.
We've run out of time.
I mean, how's that going to make any confidence? Find a random MP, make them leader, and that's going to solve it?
The Times headline today is Commons hits boiling point. That's what you may wake up to tomorrow. Thank you both very much indeed. That's all we have time for. Mark is here tomorrow. From all of us here, a very good evening.